Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the world of solo leveling Arise and talking all about the hunters. With a roster of 34 and counting, there's no shortage of characters to choose from. But let's be real, some are just better picks than others. Whether you're looking to give Jinwoo a solid support buddy or hunting for a hunter who can work seamlessly with your summons, picking the right character can make all the difference. But don't worry, I've got you covered. In this video we'll break down the best hunters and which ones might need to hit the bench. Now, we know that every hunter has their unique skills, weapons, and passive abilities, and most can hold their own in the right situation. But let's face it, some are just absolute game changers. So, if you're trying to figure out which hunters are worth your time and resources, and which ones should probably be left behind, you're in the right place. Stick around as we go through this solo leveling Arise hunter tier list to make sure you're making the best choices for your team. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking characters in solo leveling Arise. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
My friends, only 0.1% of viewers subscribe. If you like this type of content, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you in advance for your support.
The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Han Song-yi, Jo Kyu-hwan, Kim Sang-shik, and Park Byom-shik. Let's talk about the solo leveling Arise characters who might not exactly be lighting the battlefield on fire, shall we? These guys have potential, but they really need a little more help to keep up with the big guns. So let's dive into the D tier, where the competition is a little more, let's say, laid back. You'll want to avoid these characters unless you're looking for a challenge. First up is Han Song-yi. If you're looking for a solid water damage dealer, you might want to look elsewhere, because Han Song-yi just doesn't have that punch you need. She struggles to keep up in the damage department, and honestly, her water abilities are more of a trickle than a flood. You think water would be a great element to work with, but in her case, it's more of a puddle than a tide. Not the best pick if you're after some serious damage output. Then we have Jo Kyu-hwan. Now, Jo isn't exactly a bad character, but he's not going to leave much of a mark either. His lack of airborne or knockdown abilities really holds him back when you're trying to control the battlefield. And when it comes to damage, well, let's just say mediocre might be a little too generous. You might find yourself wishing for a bit more impact when you bring him into your squad. Next on the list is Kim Sang-shik. As a hunter, you'd expect some real firepower, but unfortunately, his damage just doesn't cut it. With weak break on all of his skills, he's about as threatening as a kitten when it comes to taking down tough foes. His multipliers are underwhelming, and while he might look cool, he's just not bringing enough to the table. If you need someone to carry the team, Kim might be the one to leave out of your party. Lastly, we have Park Byom-shik, who has a unique gimmick, spamming core skills when low on HP. But don't get too excited, this can only be activated once, and once that's over, he's left with low multipliers on his skills. That means after his one moment of glory, he's pretty much back to being a liability. You're better off finding someone with more consistent utility rather than relying on Park to save the day when things go south. So there you have it, our D tier heroes, not the ones to rely on for your next big fight. They've got their quirks, but when it comes to raw power and utility, these characters need some serious work to stand out. If you're looking for the heavy hitters, you're better off looking elsewhere. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Anna Ruiz, Hwang Dong-seok, Lee Joo-hee, Woo Jin-chul, Song Cheol, and Gina. Let's dive into the C tier characters of solo leveling. Arise, where things get a bit tricky. These heroes aren't necessarily bad, but they're definitely not the ones you want to build your team around. They've got some solid potential, but there are just better options out there. So if you're looking for that top tier performance, you might want to keep these guys on the back burner. First up, we have Anna Ruiz. Now, Anna's decent in the DPS department, with skills that can do a fair amount of damage. Her break damage? It's okay, nothing too spectacular. But here's the catch, Chat. She needs a lot of investment to really shine. Without that extra attention, she'll feel like a mediocre option compared to others. If you've got the resources and patience to build her up though, she could be worth it, eventually. Then there's Hwang Dong-seok, a self-buffing tank with a bit of a mixed reputation. He can dish out decent break damage and has that defensive edge. The problem is, well, there are better tanks out there who offer more utility to your team. Hwang's not a bad pick, but if you're aiming for that top tier synergy, you might find yourself reaching for someone else. Next on the list is Lee Joo-hee, a free character who can heal and provide some buffs. Sounds nice, right? Unfortunately, Joo-hee's a bit outclassed in her role. Other healers and buffers bring more to the table. and with her limited potential, she doesn't quite cut it when you need that extra oomph for tougher challenges. Woo Jin Chul is another freebie, and while he's got some pretty great mobility, he can dodge like a pro. His damage output is, well, let's just say it's nothing to write home about. He's a solid choice if you want to play it safe and keep your distance from enemies, but when it comes to dealing significant damage, you'll want to look elsewhere. He's good for avoiding hits, but in the long run, there are other characters who just do more for your team. And then we have Song Chiul, who's great for taking down mobs, but pretty terrible when it comes to handling bosses. And in solo leveling, Arise, we all know that late game is dominated by bosses, so while Chiul can shine in early to mid game content, you'll quickly find that he falls behind when it really matters. Finally, Gina. Now, Gina does have a unique trait. She generates mana to boost her damage in long battles. The catch here is that she really needs a top tier fire element team to unlock her full potential. Without that, her DPS isn't anything to brag about. So, unless you've got that perfect team composition, Gina's potential remains just that, potential. But without the right setup, her damage output won't really match up to the top dogs. So, there you have it. C tier characters in solo leveling. Arise. These heroes aren't terrible, but they're also not the best of the best. If you're stuck with them, they'll do the job, for now. But for serious progression, you'll probably want to aim higher. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Yoo Jin-ho, Baek Yoon-ho, Hwang Dong-soo, Nam Chae-young, Kim Chul, and Park Hee-jin. Alright, let's talk about some of the solid B tier characters in solo leveling. Arise. These guys might not be the absolute top picks, but they're definitely reliable and can be super useful in the right situations. So let's jump into it and take a closer look at who makes the B tier cut. First up, we have Yoo Jin-ho. He's one of those characters that you can just pick up and use without much hassle. Not bad at all for beginners. While he doesn't really stand out in any one area, he's a decent all-rounder. He can break and stun enemies, which is always handy for controlling the flow of battle. If you're working with limited options or don't have better characters yet, Yoo Jin-ho's definitely worth keeping around. Then we have Baek Yoon-ho, a great choice if you're looking for a break character. His whole playstyle revolves around that, so if you need someone to really crack open the defense of enemies, Baek's your guy. He also doubles as a tank, which makes him a solid pick for the front lines. His defense debuff is a nice touch too, helping to weaken the enemy's resistance and giving your team an edge in combat. Moving on, let's talk about Hwang Dong-soo. If you're looking for some wind damage, he's your man. He's also a solid tank with his ability to self-shield, which can keep him alive while he dishes out some decent damage. Plus, he can strip shields off enemies, which is always useful for taking down those tougher opponents. Not the flashiest, but definitely reliable when you need him. Next, we've got Nam Chae-young. She's a ranged water damage dealer who's pretty solid in her own right. The only catch is that she needs a bit more upgrading to really shine. But hey, she can freeze enemies, which is a game changer when you want to give your heavier hitters some breathing room to attack without being interrupted. Her freeze can also be clutch for crowd control in tougher battles. Now, let's talk about Kim Chul. This guy is a fantastic tank. He can shield not just himself but also the whole party, making him a real team player. He also has a stun ability that temporarily disables enemies, which is super helpful in team battles. Kim Chul may not be flashy, but he brings a lot of utility, especially if you need to control the battlefield and protect your allies. Last but not least, we've got Park Hee-jin, who's a support character that can really boost your team's damage output. She has an ultimate damage boost that will give your hardest hitters the extra edge they need to knock out enemies faster. She can also remove debuffs, so if your team's getting hit with some nasty status effects, she's there to clear it all away. Not a bad choice at all if you want a little extra support in your corner. So yeah, these B tier characters might not always be the flashiest or the absolute best, but they're definitely reliable. They fill important roles in your team and can still make a huge difference when used right. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Choi Jong-in, Kang Tae-shik, Lee Bora, Lim Tae-gyu, Min Byung-gu, Silver Main Baek Yoon-ho, Maylin Fisher, Yoo Soo-hyun, and Han Se-mi. Let's talk about the A tier characters in solo leveling, Arise. These heroes might not always grab the spotlight like the S tier ones, but trust me, they bring some serious power to the table. So buckle up, because I'm about to introduce you to some of the most underrated yet crazy good characters you'll want in your squad. First up, we've got Choi Jong-in. He's a beast when it comes to fire damage, and not just any fire damage, we're talking about long range, high damage attacks that can scorch anything in his path. Plus, his ability to burn enemies, it adds this sweet damage over time effect that just keeps on hurting them. Oh, and did I mention his debuffs? They're perfect for making enemies weaker and more vulnerable to your team's attacks. A solid pick if you're all about that fiery destruction. Then there's Kang Tae-shik. This guy is a little sleeper hit. He's an SR character, but don't let that fool you. He can totally hang with the big leagues. His bleeding ability is a game changer. Enemies that bleed just can't stand up to the damage over time, making him a pure DPS machine. If you're looking for someone who can dish out some serious punishment, Kang's your guy. Don't underestimate him just because he's an SR. His advancements make him a true powerhouse. Moving on to Lee Bora. This one's for all you boss fight lovers out there. Her dark damage is decent, but it's her ability to debuff enemies that really shines. She can lower attack and movement speed, making her a must-have when you're taking down those big bad bosses. And don't forget her charm, which boosts your damage output, making her a solid support and damage dealer combo. Now, if you need someone who can deal with bosses and tear through defenses, Lim Tae-gyu is your go-to. His dark damage is okay, but where he really excels is in break damage. His ultimate skill? Let's just say it hits harder than a truck. This skill alone can shred bosses, making Lim a fantastic addition to any team looking for some heavy-hitting firepower. Next, we have Min Byung-gu, the best healer in the game. If you thought healing was all about keeping your team alive, think again. Min can not only heal, but also buff teammates and weaken enemies, making him the ultimate support character. His skill set is perfect for keeping your team going while making sure enemies are kept in check. A healer with this much utility, definitely A-tier material. Then there's Silver Main Baek Yoonho. He's got a unique gimmick. The lower his HP, the more damage he deals. It's a risky play, but when paired with his ability to bleed enemies, his damage output skyrockets. He's a hunter through and through, delivering massive damage, but you've got to be careful with his HP. One wrong move and he could go down fast, but when he's on fire, he's an absolute wrecking ball. Next up, we've got Maylin Fisher. She's a decent healer, but what really makes her stand out is her ability to support her team. If her HP is high, her attacks aren't too shabby either, but her true strength lies in her buffs and her ability to remove enemy shields with her basic skill. A solid choice if you want someone who can handle the healing but also shut down enemy defenses. Yoo Soo-hyun is another strong pick for your team. Her DPS is decent, no matter what the enemy's elemental weakness is, but where she really shines is her ability to apply defense penetration. This is a huge deal, especially against tanky bosses. And on top of that, she can increase fire elemental damage with magic reaction. So if you're planning to go all in on fire damage, Yoo Soo-hyun can give that extra edge your team needs. Last but definitely not least, we've got Han Se-mi. She's like your personal lifeline, providing healing and MP recovery to keep your team in the fight longer. Her airborne effects come in clutch, especially when you need to disrupt enemies or avoid damage. Plus, her buffs can make a huge difference in long battles, helping your team stay strong and pushing through tough encounters. And that's it for the A-tier characters. They might not be the flashiest, but they can totally hold their own and bring some serious utility to your team. So, if you're looking to shake up your squad, definitely give these characters a try. They won't disappoint. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Amamiya Mire, Sidsa to Dimami Bibes, Isala Wright, Emma Laron, Seo Jiwoo, Go Gun-hee, and Harper. Let's dive right into the heart of solo leveling Arise, where some characters absolutely steal the show. If you're looking for the absolute best of the best in terms of damage, utility, and synergy, the S-tier characters are where it's at. These are the ones that will make your team feel unstoppable, whether you're tackling bosses or going up against tough enemies. First up, we've got Amamiya Mire. She's basically a one-woman army. With her high damage output and the ability to recover her own MP, decrease cooldowns, and increase her power gauge, she's built for efficiency. You don't need to rely on anyone else to keep her at full power. She can do it all herself. When it comes to solo runs or difficult fights, having Mire in your corner is a game changer. Next, let's talk about Isla Wright. This girl is all about variety, providing your team with a wide range of buffs to suit different situations. Her passive is what really makes her shine though. It reduces the cooldown of your second character's ultimate skill, which can make all the difference in a long battle. And when you pair Isla with Dark Element Hunters, oh boy, the power increase is insane. If you're aiming to dominate, Isla is the way to go. Then there's Emma Laron, the true queen of versatility. Not only does she deal incredible AoE damage, but she also has the best break damage out of all the characters. What does that mean for you? It means that Emma can hit hard while also making it easier to break enemy defenses. But it doesn't stop there. She also boosts fire damage and defense penetration for the whole team, making her an all-around powerhouse you'll want in your lineup. Seoji Woo, the break expert, deserves a special mention. When it comes to bosses, Seoji Woo is your go-to character. She's got the best break capabilities out of all the hunters, meaning she can tear through enemy shields and defenses like they're paper. On top of that, she provides shields or bonus break damage to the rest of your team, which is a fantastic way to enhance survivability. If you want to outlast the toughest bosses, Seoji Woo is an essential part of the team. Now, Go Gun-hee is another character you absolutely need to consider for your team. With multiple skills that can apply break, she's not only versatile but also extremely strong when paired with light element characters. Gun-hee brings buffs that boost both survivability and overall damage, making her a solid choice for anyone looking for a well-rounded support and damage dealer. She's one of those characters that makes your team feel balanced and strong. And last but certainly not least, we've got Harper. If you're looking for high damage, Harper is your go-to. She can dish out serious hits while also applying break with multiple skills, but it's her synergy with dark element hunters. In Dark hunters that really makes her shine. By providing buffs to those hunters, she helps them unleash their full potential. If you love dark element characters, then Harper is an absolute must-have on your team. So there you have it. The cream of the crop in solo leveling Arise. These S-tier characters are what you need to truly dominate in the game. With their impressive damage, buffs, and utility, your team will be unstoppable in no time. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Alicia, Blanche, Cha Hae-in, and Charlotte. Alright, let's talk about some of the absolute powerhouses in solo leveling. Arise. Characters so strong they could probably take down the entire game by themselves. First up, we have Alicia Blanche. She's got the highest water DPS in the game. And trust me, when she starts raining down her attacks, it's like a tidal wave sweeping through the enemy. Plus, her freeze ability, absolute game changer in crowd control, and if you thought that wasn't enough, her basic skill even creates a shield for her, which adds some much needed protection while she's obliterating everything in sight. Talk about having your back covered. Next, let's dive into Cha Hae-in, and wow, is she a beast. Right now, she's pretty much the best damage dealer in the entire game. Her skill literally stops enemies from healing themselves, which is a huge deal when you're up against those annoying bosses that just keep healing. She doesn't just play defense, though. Cha Hae-in clears stages faster than most characters can even blink. High damage, no healing, and quick clears. This girl is all about finishing fights fast. Now, for something a little different, Charlotte. She's all about crowd control, and when I say she excels at it, I mean it. Charlotte has multiple crowd control abilities that make her a nightmare for enemies, especially when they try to swarm her. And let's not forget her burst damage. When she hits hard. Whether it's a single target or a whole group, her AoE abilities leave nothing standing. She's the perfect pick if you want to lock down the enemy and dish out some serious punishment. All three of these characters, Alicia Blanche, Cha Hae-in, and Charlotte, are absolute legends in their own right, and if you've got them on your team, you're basically set to dominate. Whether it's freezing the field, wiping out enemies with overwhelming damage, or controlling the chaos around you, they've got you covered. So, if you're looking for top tier characters to take your gameplay to the next level, these three are your best bet. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.